Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon is a podcast which focuses on contemporary social and educational issues from an educational leadership and behavioral research perspective. We will delve into those issues that are important to you as we listen to understand the needs of others and positively respond to address those needs, concerns, and/or fears. Professionals in their respective fields of expertise, in addition to friends of the podcast, will share their unique perspectives of positive solutions to what matters to you most. Join us every Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time, as we share positive solutions to those issues that are important to you.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon. Today's guest is the pastor of one of the Moravian churches here on the Big Island of St. Croix, United States Virgin Islands. His name is Reverend Jeremy Francis, who you will get to meet shortly after our fun trivia segment of this episode on the podcast.
Do you know a whole lot of information that you would like to utilize in a fun and useful way? Or perhaps you like learning new fun facts, which can be used as conversation starters at a meal with a friend or while standing in a long line. The Ultimate Trivial Pursuit Question and Answer book contains fun facts of sports and leisure, science and nature, arts and literature, history, entertainment, and geography. Test your skills with others every week as we begin our episodes with fun trivia. You'll be given 6 questions at the beginning of the podcast, and you will have the opportunity to post your correct answers to all 6 questions to drgordonpodcast1@gmail.com. The first person to post all 6 correct answers will have their names announced as the winner on the following episode. The person with the most wins after 50 episodes will win a gift certificate from our podcast's gift basket of tangible goodies. Who knows? Maybe you can win dinner for 2 at a restaurant in your area, or enjoy a full body massage from a licensed health and fitness spa. Don't be bashful. Join the fun every Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time on this podcast, Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon.
Now, we're going to jump right into our fun trivia segment. And so if you do have a sheet of paper or a pen or pencil, go ahead and take it out, and let's get started with the fun trivia segment. Now, this segment covers entertainment. Question number 1. Don't forget, as usual, I will say the questions twice. Listen carefully and write the correct answer to the question. Question number 1. Who is the godfather of soul who played the Reverend Cleophas James in The Blues Brothers? Who is the godfather of soul who played the Reverend Cleophas James in The Blues Brothers? Question number 2. What superhero battles against the evil Green Goblin? What superhero battles against the evil Green Goblin? Question number 3. What TV animation series takes its names from the fictional Colorado town where it is set? Question number 3. What TV animation series takes its name from the fictional Colorado town where it is set? Question number 4. What fruity drink does William spill on Anna the second time they meet in Notting Hill? Question number 4. What fruity drink does William spill on Anna the second time they meet in Notting Hill? Question number 5. What name is given to the computer-created version of 20th century life in a 1999 movie starring Keanu Reeves? Question number 5. What name is given to the computer-created version of 20th century life in a 1999 movie starring Keanu Reeves? And question number 6, our last trivia question. What role did Cesar Romero fill in 19 TV episodes of Batman? What role did Cesar Romero fill in 19 TV episodes of Batman? Go ahead and submit your correct answers. All 6 questions and answers to those questions do need to be correct to Dr. Gordon podcast1 at gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
You're listening to the podcast Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon, which is uploaded weekly on Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central on your favorite podcast directory.
Very pleasant good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon. Today, we're very honored to have with us Dr. Reverend Jeremy Francis, and we'll call him Reverend Francis on today's podcast. So, Reverend Francis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. It's good to be with you today, and it's good to see you as well.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had
Been a while.
contact. Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Reverend Francis, so that our listening and also our viewing audience can get to know who you are before we delve into the topic of healing as a nation.
Sure. I was born here in St. Croix. I was raised in your dad's church, and that's where we know each other from. So we know each other basically all our lives. That's the Bethel AME Church in Christiansted. At about 10 years old, I moved to Antigua, where I joined the Moravian Church. I spent my formative years, my high school years there. Then I came back to St. Croix for a while, about 2 or 3 years. Then I went off to Jamaica to study to become a Moravian pastor. And with that I am now for the last 18, going on 19 years. I have a diploma in ministerial studies, a master's in theology, and a doctorate in ministry, concentrating in worship, preaching, and spirituality. I've worked all over the Caribbean, from Trinidad in the south to now I'm here in St. Croix, where I pastor um, the Friedensberg Moravian Church in Frederickstead. And when I say all over the Caribbean, I've been to Trinidad, I've worked in, pastored in Trinidad, Barbados, St. Kitts, Antigua, and now here, and all in the span of 18 years. So it's quite a bit of moving. And I'm an avid musician. I like music of all kinds. I like culture. I like politics. I like community activity. I like social work. I like social networking. I like people. Um, in general, I like to be around people. I firmly believe that there is good in everybody, and that everyone just needs someone to help them to realize the good that is in them and the possibilities that exist in them. And I kind of believe that that's part of my call, to help persons to realize not only their purpose in Christ, but the purpose that, that they can be who they set out to be, and that there is some good in them. So I am like that. I'm a social media geek to some extent. I am on Facebook quite a bit. I am my wife. I'm married with one son. My wife tells me I am the king of one-liners. You would have to know what's going on and how I probably think to realize how my one-liners fit into what's happening, um, culturally, socially, politically. Because I'm also cognizant of the fact that I'm a pastor. So as much as I would like to be forthright with some things at some point, I, realize I need to be covert. So I give you a one line and leave you to figure it out. And that's just who I am. And what you see with me is what you get. I don't really have much airs and graces. I try to be as simple as possible, as down to earth as possible, because I just don't think that sometimes there's a time and place for the airs and graces, and that time and place is not every day. And so, yes, I am a pastor. When I need to put on my collar and my gown and all of that, I can do that. On a day-to-day basis, though, I am in a jean pants and a pair of Birkenstock slippers and a shirt, and I'm good to go. And that's just who I
You're the perfect person for the podcast.
am.
You've
That's
met
just
the qualifications.
thanks. That's just it.
Approved.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, we do go a long way back, and you've had quite a rich upbringing, and also
Yeah.
a legacy that you've been working on over the past 18, going on 19, 20 years now.
19. Yeah.
Yeah. So, happy anniversary in advance.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. So, see how God has been leading you and guiding you along the way. I know, like you mentioned, all over the Caribbean, and now you're back where you started. You're
Yeah.
back in St. Croix, like I like to
Yeah.
say on the podcast, the Big Island of St. Croix, U.S.
The Big
Virgin Islands.
Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a pleasure, and I know your parishioners enjoy having you there. I've seen some of the
Yeah.
comments back and forth, on Facebook, and yeah, I hear you, and I get what you're saying about being careful and mindful of what
Yeah.
we do post on Facebook. In junior high school and on the high school level, we tell students, be careful what you put online, because it stays there. So,
You never get it back.
right, and one of the counselors has a poster stuck up on the window that says, "Be careful what you hang online." So it has like clothes on a
Hmm.
clothesline, what you put online if you don't want it aired in public. So that was a nice word picture
Yeah.
to the students to remind them of that, especially now today, as we're in the middle of a political divide and there's
Yeah.
social unrest, and we see all sorts of posts and memes, and that has been like a current theme that has been on the podcast. We have mentioned those um, behaviors and that I've seen recently, based upon the times in which we're living, and that we
Hmm.
all need to be careful and responsible and be held accountable for what we're choosing to put on there, and not reacting too quickly to say something that could
Right.
offend.
Right.
But to just be mindful. So I'm also an avid socialite as well on social media, but
Yeah,
I
you
try to
are.
I try to put things that are positive and uplifting, a little
Yeah.
educational as well. So, theology. So let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
How there's and again, I've mentioned this in prior and previous podcasts. And because this is where the times in which we're living, you turn on the television, you turn on the radio, you get on the computer. This is what we're bombarded with. So, how do we address what's happening to help to encourage other individuals so that they can navigate the times in which we're living? So there's a political divisiveness. We just had an election, a call has been made, and some people are happy, some are not. That's what happens. And there's also social unrest that's taking place. And if we were to dissect and peel back and to go deeper, there's some core values that people have that's driving the attitudes and behavior that we're seeing. And we're not demonizing either side. Unfortunately, some people are, and if you're not believing what they're believing, then you're that other side is demonized, and that is not very productive, and that's not very helpful. And as if you were to be the nation's pastor,
Hmm.
from that lens of that perspective, what are some words of encouragement and admonition that you could share to help people to heal? And the topic for today's podcast is healing as a nation. So I know it's a
Um,
lot of things I've thrown at you. So I'll step back and I'll let you share.
I start from the last part. If I were to be the nation's pastor, what would I say to the nation to help them heal? Um, One, I would say to them that this is not new. We've had, even from as far back as Bible days, leadership. Let's just take the political climate. Leaders and leadership that has not been transformational, but rather transactional. We've also had leaders who have not been perhaps best in this time, but they have had to serve their time. I would say to persons that we ought to, yes, stand up for right and what God desires, but it does not call us to be bullet voters or persons or bullet people who hold up one thing on one hand but then ignore totally all the other stuff that's going on. And so as we go through it, yes, we need to be tolerant of each other. We will have differing opinions, but God has always called us to look out for what is the common good. And I think what is happening right now as I look across America is, and what part of our division that's taking place is that persons are no longer looking out for the common good.
Mm.
Um, let's take the coronavirus for example. Something as simple as wearing a mask to help protect yourself, to help protect the other person, so that we can get through this particular rough season. The mask has become political. Um, and so persons are now saying, well, I have a right not to wear a mask. But then you have a right not to wear a mask, but then your right to not wear a mask is endangering the rights of other people who just want to live. What is the common good? Let's take the elections for example. The elections has happened. Um, there has been, the numbers tell a different story as to what the individual candidates are saying. One candidate is refusing to concede and to even facilitate the process of moving on because of what is a selfish, what I can consider to be a selfish desire. Um, that might not be politically correct language, and I can understand that, but what is the common good? If you're going to fight for justice, because you figure that you are being um, targeted and not used correctly, then you have a right to fight for that, but fight for that on a platform that is factual. Present the evidence so that persons can be convinced that you do have an argument. In the absence of that argument, what is the common good? Your actions is leaving us as a nation, as a people, open to all sorts of foreign terrorists, and our nation has now become vulnerable, both in terms of our economy, both because we don't have a clear leader, so nobody knows what's happening, and the economy will begin to tell the tale. It's already struggling because of the coronavirus, both in terms of terrorism and terrorist acts and what's not. So what is the common good? At some point, you have to put yourself, and to use the word of scripture, let self decrease, and at some point you have to decrease so that the whole could increase. And I think as the na- as a nation, we just need to begin to get back to a point where we tolerate each other and do what is best for each other. And if you were to, that is nationally. If we were to come on a territorial level, we have a different dynamic here. I mean, I don't think the political issue is as bad here as the violence issue, because I think in the territory we have lost a sense of respect for life. When we can think that in 340 something days, or 330 something days, because we only have a couple of weeks left in the year, we have already killed by gun violence 49 persons. That is a high number. And when you listen to the reasons why most of them have died, it's because we could not manage conflict. So somehow we need to learn again how to be tolerant of each other's position, how to agree to disagree, how to say, okay, I hear you, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to leave this one alone. Case in point, I would admit to you that I told you earlier, I'm a social media junkie. I I I was drawn into a conversation last week, a conversation that I generally try to stay away from persons who are sycophants for either side, and persons who, but somehow a day was early last week, or a day sometime, yeah, last week, some point late last week, I was drawn into a conversation, and I was upset with myself afterwards
That tends to happen sometimes.
because I allowed myself to be drawn into the conversation. And eventually I had to say to the person, after going back and forth for about a half an hour, we will not agree.
Yeah, it gets
But
exhausting after a while. But go ahead with your
it
point. Yeah.
does. It really does. I had to say to them, we will not agree, but I wish you well and God's peace be yours. And just had to walk away from that. And I think that we need to get to that point where we've just become tolerant of each other without losing sense of our humanity.
All right, so yeah, those are excellent points that you did raise, Reverend Francis, in light of dealing with conflict. And I've been seeing that quite a bit on social media, the conflict. And so I was, I put on my instructor's hat, my English teacher's hat, because in high school we teach students about dealing with conflict. So I went and I got the language network book, which is what we use in high school and also in the junior high level. And dealing with conflict, and I'm going to ask the individual who assists me with the editing of the podcast to also put this up as well. But here's some thoughts for us to remember. And in dealing with conflict. And this applies not just to students, apparently it also applies to adults as well. I've mentioned those even with college degrees, those who claim the cause of Christ. We need a reminder, a refresher, a course in that as well. And we try to appeal to the intellect, we try to appeal to the emotion. There's a spiritual aspect of it as well. And sometimes some people are either blind or deaf, it seems, or just willful or intentional. So it bears repeating. So in dealing with conflict, listen to each other. Keep the lines of communication open. All group members must feel comfortable voicing their opinions. Treat each other with respect. And these are just 4 things. Disagreements doesn't have to mean being disagreeable. Respect helps groups resolve conflict. Number 3, use reason rather than emotion as a basis for discussion. The group should make decisions based on the issues, not on individual personalities or agendas. And then lastly, number 4, work toward consensus. To achieve a solution that all group members can support, some or even all may have to compromise. So that's just a little reminder
And
for
and that is
all of us.
and that is very helpful, because especially I particularly like number 3, the whole idea of dealing with the issue and not the person.
Yeah.
Because I often say that if we have to, even in an argument, if we have to begin to address the person, it means that you have lost, the person who addresses the person first has just lost the argument, because it then means that your argument has become shallow and hollow. And so therefore, in order to defend yourself, you go not at the issue or at the principle of the matter, you go at the person of the matter. And if you have to do that, then you've lost it.
Yeah, you're attacking personality instead of dealing with the issue. You really don't have any
Right. And
basis.
so you have no basis. And so your decision making is no longer on the issue, but it's whether or not it's based on an emotion of whether you like or dislike the person.
It becomes
And so
personal, yeah.
it becomes personal after that. But I just think that, as we look at what is happening across the nation, we look at what is happening across the territory. Persons, I think, have grown intolerant. I mean, I've since the projected winner has been declared in the presidential elections, the memes have been going crazy. But I also think, I look at how people rejoiced in the streets, no consideration to Corona, and that was a problem for me. But I just think that persons needed to exhale, because persons were on edge, and whether we want to admit it or not, this last president has edged persons to a particular place, either good or bad. And so some persons were glad for an opportunity to just be relieved because they didn't know what else next to expect. But at some point, while I did not agree with a lot of his comments and whatnot, and while I did do my own poking in my own way, I'm not going to say no. At the end of the day, I, he was the president. I'll be glad for the day when he's not, but he was the president, and so we had to tolerate him. We've done it for 4 years. If I would say to him, "Sir, you've had your time. Now you just need to step away and allow the nation to begin a process of healing."
Yeah, and even within, and let's talk about, your pastor. Let's talk about church for a second. There's
Sure.
even a divide within the body or the community of believers where
Yeah.
there's a split based upon the times in which
The
we're living.
evangelicals and yeah.
Right, and so even prior to the election, I saw again social media and heard comments as well. Individuals on one side saying, if you support Okay, we're talking about Democrats and Republicans. Okay, let's just put it out there. All right, it's not a
Yeah.
secret. So if you support the Democratic platform, then you're not of God. You're and they've demonized the Democratic platform. And some of the issues that they talk that are brought up are, of course, abortion, um, the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, and
Same-sex marriages.
right. So and people have said that if you believe in God, then you don't vote on that side. And on the other side, the Republicans, they're saying that they don't agree with the person. However, they believe in their platform, which is better because it's more in alignment with the Bible. And I've seen that too. And if you vote Democrat, then you're voting against God's way. And it's such a stark contrast. Is it that dichotomous? Because I have spoken with individuals, let's say I've spoken with individuals on the Republican side who said, I recall speaking to a lady, Caucasian American, Republican, Bible believing, and she says she's pro-life and pro-choice. And I'd never heard that before. I said, wait, say that again? And she said that she was pro-life and pro-choice. I said, really? I thought it was one or the other, not both and. And so she says, I'm for life, but I'm against the government telling me what to do with my body, is what she said. So I said, okay, that's another way of thinking. I had never considered that prior. And out of curiosity, I've had other conversations with individuals similar to her, and they've expressed those sentiments. And I said, well, why is it in the media all we're hearing is either this or the other? So, and then on the Democratic side, we know of a number of conservative Democrats, and we know of a number of churches. I know a number of members who are Democrats. They're born again Christians, and they are also pro-life as well. So it's not about demon. I think it's another trick of the devil to have people at odds at each other by saying it's either this or that, and that then causes walls to go up. People then insulate themselves, they withdraw, they shut down the other side, and it's easier for them to demonize and detach themselves as opposed to engaging in wholesome conversation to say, I hear what you're saying, and what good is it to have an idea or concept if it can't be tested in the marketplace of other ideas or concepts? And we need to listen, and I keep saying this in my other episodes on the podcast, listen to understand and then to respond. Not listen to have a reaction to say, oh, you're wrong. That doesn't help. What do you think about that?
I agree. You are spot on. Listen to understand and then respond. I incidentally, I fall in one of those gray areas too. I am pro-life and also pro-choice. But I mean, but my issue is that I think as a church, let me take it from there. As a church, I think we need to be extremely careful. And one of the concerns I have had is how the body of Christ has been portrayed throughout this political season. We have been portrayed as basically racial, um, black versus white. We've been portrayed as people who, allow our doctrinal differences to become major splitting points. And and I'm very concerned about that because I don't think that that is how God intended for us to be. Um, and I think that we need to be extremely careful in the church that we don't play into the devil's hand and lose our effectiveness, or to use good Bible terms, lose our saltiness of the earth because and sacrifice our moral ability to speak out on issues because we want to be on the altar of political correctness. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to be careful of. Yeah, the Democrats have one perspective, the Republicans have one perspective, and somewhere in the middle, there are some of us who can hold on to some things, but not so far on one side or the next side. Again, like you said, we need to listen to each other and hear, because sometimes if we listen, we begin to realize that there's more that we
We
have
have
in
in
common
common, yeah.
than that which really separates us. And so it is really a case of what can we use to keep us together, and where do we split ways. And that's what I mean. For me, I don't think you can, and that's why I call bullet voting or bullet issues. I don't think we can hold up one bullet issue and then downplay the other, and hold on to this as right, because there are things along the way. um the Republicans tend to be a lot more unfriendly to helping those who are less fortunate. And the Democrats tend to be more on the social activism side and helping those who are less fortunate. Those are flip issues. Um, we can go down that road, but whether we like it or don't like it or don't agree with it, is we need to listen to each other and see if they can find a way that we can work together for the common good, and not make a singular issue a divisive issue. And I think that the church, if we are not careful, we are going to, and the church has also been under a lot of scrutiny for the wrong reasons sometimes, and we sometimes lose our footing. So we have to be very careful that we don't lose more of it, not because of what others have said about us, but what we have said about ourselves and that we have said to other people about ourselves.
It seems, excuse me, this seems to be a different measurement of standard that was used over the past 4 years. And individuals who may not accept Christ, those who may have rejected Christ, have said, okay, you say this is your value, but what you're doing and saying is totally different to what you
Right.
claim. Um,
And
how
that
can you?
makes it difficult. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Things like that makes it difficult for the church then to be a voice of anything,
Because it come across
because
as hypocritical. Because if you're
it's
using
hypocritical.
if you're using this standard to say, okay, well, God forgives A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and God does, especially if you're repentant. But then you're saying, well, how about this other candidate and their son and what they did, and you're holding that up as a measuring rod and demonizing. Why is it God's providence for one person to be in office, but God's judgment for another person to be in office?
Right.
Providence versus judgment, and who gets to call that?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I came across in preparing for our conversation. This is what we're having. Just a conversation,
Hmm.
and we just for those who are viewing this and those who are listening, it's just to help us to understand more the times in which we're living, and also to be encouraged within our spirits to know that all is not lost. It's not hopeless. There's a lot of hope and there's hopefulness, and we just need to educate ourselves. I came across this and. It says Jesus was a philosopher. And if you doubt this, I'd like to persuade you by way of his parables, which imply a certain kind of ethical system with several key values. These include principally prudence, non possessiveness, non judgmentalism, humility, inclusion, and forgiveness. I was like, wow, I like that.
Hmm.
I never thought of the Christ's parables in those terms before, but it is spot on. And I challenge those who, um, both those who have accepted Christ, to just do a review of Christ's parables and see what it says. And those who might have been, who are rejecting Christ, I challenge you to, get a Bible and just check out or just Google Jesus's parables and see for yourself if what Christ's words have said over the years, which still applies today, if that resonates with you. So that's just my homework assignment for those who are listening and
Hmm.
viewing this as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think if it wasn't Sunday, it was the Sunday before. One of the scripture readings was the Beatitudes. And I thought that was an interesting, um, to hear it again in these times. I thought was quite interesting in terms of what scripture is saying to us now, because the Beatitude is a way of living. It addresses every facet of life. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Um, it kind of gives us a kind of hope that as much as life is going along, because on one end of the Beatitudes is a life, modern, everyday situation. But on the other end is the hope of Christ. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted.
Right.
Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. So it gives you a
What
good
about the
sense.
peacemakers? What about the
Blessed are the
peacemakers?
peacemakers. Yeah,
That's needed.
that is needed. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Um, I when I heard it, I said, "Well, this is an interesting lesson to hear in these
Good
times because
reminder.
it's a good reminder of what we're going through now, that there is a reward, as it were, or there is a word in season for everything that we're facing now, that we don't necessarily have to fight fire with fire, so to speak. It's good to just sit back and allow God to be God in the midst of all things. And I think that was a powerful word. And I think we just need to, like I said, be very careful. And as a church, I am very conscious. We need to be very careful that we don't lose our saltiness because we try
Those
to be correct.
Right. For those who might not be versed with church terminology, when we use the word saltiness or be salt of the earth, which is mentioned in Matthew in the Gospel, so salt has its three characteristics or components. It creates a thirst. If you eat something that's salty, think of popcorn or potato chips, it causes a thirst. Salt. If you don't have a refrigerator, you're out in the cold, it helps to preserve meat.
Preserve.
So it preserves. And also salt purifies as well. And so when that was an analogy that was used in the scripture about being salt of the earth, are we as individuals who claim the cause of Christ, those who say that they believe in God, are we causing a thirst in the world? Are people saying, looking at us and listening to us and saying, wow, I admire him or I admire her. I would like to be like that. I wish I had that calmness or that peacefulness or that optimism. Are we causing that thirst? Or are we
But
helping?
remember that salt also has some sort of healing properties as well.
Exactly.
And
Go
so
ahead. Yeah.
it's also about us being able to still offer some measure of health to the earth, and being able to be healers of what we find. And so when we talk about losing our saltiness, it's just, I mean, if you have salt long enough, it will lose its worth
It's
and its
flavor.
essence and its flavor. Then you can't do any, you can't he if you as Christians, if we people in the church, if we've lost our flavor, then we can't heal the world, then we can't preserve the world, then we can't add flavor to the world, then we can't add um you know, to satisfy the thirst of others in the world, then we lose our saltiness,
Effectiveness. You lose your
our
effectiveness.
effectiveness.
Yeah.
That's the word. And we have to be careful of that. So, yeah.
It's a good reminder for all of us, and it's not that we're sitting here pointing our fingers and wagging our fingers at anyone, because if when I'm doing this, there are three more fingers pointing back at
Coming
me.
back.
So I'm talking about myself as well. So I'm not judging anyone. So if anyone's listening to this or watching this and
Oh no.
getting upset, okay, we're not demonizing anyone. We're just, we're like, I don't know, referees saying, hey,
Yeah.
time out.
Yeah.
Stop.
Let's go to your corner
Yeah,
and
let's
breathe
regroup.
a little,
Yeah.
think it through again, and come back.
And,
We
and let's get back on the court and do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, in this world, in this day, there is not a lack of information. There's not a lack of knowledge, but we have to cipher through stuff. And there are some people who will believe some things and some people who will not believe. Some will agree with us and some will not agree with us. The key point then becomes, how do we deal with those who do not agree? Like minds, no problem. But when we have differing of opinions, what is the extent that we are prepared to go, so that with the people who are we going to, because you don't agree, then you are of the devil? No, you we can't do that. We can't do that.
Right. In my going back to the language network book,
Sure.
distinguishing between facts and opinions. I'm just segueing. You just hey, thank you. You're just touching all those points that I looked at. There's a little, and I laughed to myself because I'm like, wow, how appropriate. There was an example in the textbook that we teach our students where to tell the difference between facts and opinions. A fact, as we know, is a statement that can be proven. So
Hmm.
this is what's in the book. I didn't make this up, folks. So here's an example of that. Mrs. Lee, an incumbent for 20 years, lost the November election by a few thousand votes. Now, that's a fact. It can be proven by counting the votes.
Hmm.
Here's an opinion, which is a statement that cannot be proven, usually contains someone's view or feelings about a subject. The Foreign Relations Committee, and this is an example, the Foreign Relations Committee will suffer without the benefit of Mrs. Lee's expert knowledge of international affairs. Well, that's someone's view that can't
Yeah.
be proven. So it's about learning the difference between what's a fact or an opinion. And I remember walking into some classes as an administrator. I going to observe teachers, and I remember one of the teachers was teaching the difference between fact and opinion. And this is just this past year or last school year, and this is one of the seventh grade classes I walked into, and I was observing the teacher. And so the young lady was, trying to figure it out, the young lady that the teacher was working with. And I said to her, I said, may I say something? And sometimes I do this in the informal observations. In the formal observations, I slip in the back of the classroom. I keep quiet. I observe. But in informal observations, sometimes, I will interact with the lesson and with the students and the teacher. And they like that. So I said to the young lady, if I were to say to you that McDonald's, KFC, and Wendy's all serve French fries, is that a fact or an opinion? And she's like, that's a fact, of course. So I said, what if I were to say to you that
McDonald's has the best fries.
there you go. McDonald's has the best tasting fries out of the three. Is that a fact or
Hmm.
opinion? She goes, that's a fact. I'm giving free advertisements to McDonald's right
Yeah,
now. But no, but of course, that's an
that's
opinion.
an opinion. Yep.
Yeah. But we'll find like minds to say, hey, you know what? McDonald's has the best tasting fries
Hmm.
compared to KFC and Wendy's. But some people, would get into arguments or fights over something as simple as that, or who's the greatest of all athletes of all times? Michael Jordan or
Michael
LeBron
Jordan.
James, right?
Hmm.
So
Kobe.
yeah, we don't want to start a war here. Who's the best president? I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Time out.
time
So
out.
again,
Retreat.
yeah, we have opinions, we have our feelings, and that's okay. That's fine. But let's not get to the point where we're demonizing and ostracizing one side against the other, and just be careful, because the world is watching, and we can do better in the 21st century. And
We're too intelligent.
we should
We're
be.
too. We should be, and we're too advanced in our technology to not reason, in a way that suggests that we are able to at least just think things through and pick sense from nonsense, as my mother used to tell me when I was growing up. And I think that is perhaps one of the struggles we have. We should be able to even it's scriptural, but it's also practical. Peter says to us that we must be able to give reason for the faith and for the hope that we have. And I think that when persons, we should be able to sit down, and at some point, you don't necessarily have to be highfalutin and high flown, but be able to just articulate in your own manner why you believe what you
What you
believe
believe, and have the supporting
and
evidence
have
there.
supporting evidence
Don't just
to
spew things that you're regurgitating, hearing what someone else says,
right,
and there's
right.
no evidence of that. I mean, I just read today the lieutenant governor of Texas is saying, I'm going to give $1 million to the person that could find proof of voter fraud. Oh, you mean you don't have any proof right now that you have to
Mm,
offer money for that? So
mhm,
you're right now demonstrating evidence that there isn't any proof of
right.
that. So you're having the
And
whole country in an upheaval because of lack of
Yeah.
evidence. Yeah, go ahead.
And that is one of the dangers of social media. Um, I've learned, and I think sometimes we need to learn that not everything we read on the internet is true, and we have to be careful of some of the things that we post and what's not, because people see something and run with it, and it's not necessarily factual. And I mean, we've gotten to the point where Twitter and Facebook now beginning to flag stuff that's not true because of how it misguides and misinforms persons on a large level,
And it's causing harm
and it's
because
causing
of
harm.
right. It's causing harm based upon the evidence of people that are listening and reading and sharing this misinformation,
Hmm.
and people are believing it and are plotting to cause bodily injury to other individuals. And so there's a level of responsibility and accountability that Facebook has and Twitter has to do something and not just say, oh, well, you have freedom of speech. Yes, there is freedom of speech, but along with that freedom comes a responsibility. That's
Responsibility.
why you can't yell fire in a crowded room or get on board a plane and say, oh, I have a bomb. Oh, I'm just joking.
Just joking.
There are consequences for that. And I've
Yeah.
seen people saying, oh, well, I don't have freedom of speech by what I'm posting on Facebook because I keep labeling things on there. So I'm going to leave Facebook and go to MeWe or to Parler. Well, you know what? The issue isn't the place. It's a person in the place. And that's what I've said to
Hmm.
students who would say, oh, I don't like this school. It's too strict. I want to go to this other school. And what I've said to students is, the problem isn't the school, because you can go to any school you want to. They have rules and regulations as well. The concern right now is your attitude, your behavior, and you're wanting to leave here because you think it's too strict. Your issues and problems are going to follow you wherever you go, because
Hmm.
the problem isn't the place. You are the problem. So until you change your attitude and behavior, you're going to keep on having problems. So
Yep.
people can leave Facebook and go to MeWe or Parler, but if your heart isn't in the right place, if you want to go ahead and put things out there that are misinformation and not factual, that's causing division as opposed to healing, then you, it, you need to stop,
Yeah.
reflect, breathe, and do differently. And I shared this in the last podcast as well. If it's not true, if it's not kind, if it's not necessary, then don't share it. You have a
Yeah.
responsibility. So that's the educator in me, but it's just
But it's
you see this
needed.
happening. Yeah, go ahead.
It's needed because I just think that even adults sometimes see some stuff, and I guess because one of the things I learned in my all my years of academia is that research is bias. You can if you can research to fit, and you can find somebody out there who has written or said something to fit whatever direction you want to take your paper. And so that is why even in research there is some measure of objectivity that is needed.
Yes,
um, and I find that a lot of persons have lost that. They see something that fits into their narrative, and so
correct.
therefore they run with it. Case in point, let's be real practical here and real relevant. So yesterday, or day before yesterday, or sometime throughout this today is only Wednesday, so between Monday and today, there was Sunday and today, there was this whole brouhaha about the 60 Minutes interview and the vaccine, that persons are coming to the Virgin and they're going to come and basically mandate everybody in the Virgin Islands to take this vaccine, because basically we are going to become the guinea pigs and the testers of this vaccine. I mean, let's just look at this. Let's reason this through. How best, how practical is what this is saying? Who in your right minds would want to allow anybody to come to use their people in the, I mean, 50,000 people on St. Croix alone? Um, who's going to come to allow that to happen? I mean, I saw it and just dismissed it. And I said, no, if person, but it was shared across Facebook. And I saw people getting up in arms, not me and mine. We ain't taking that and I ain't using that. And God alone and have to come out of heaven and tell me that I need to take this vaccine and this and that. And I'm like, wow. Um, as not going on the vaccine road, but I was like, wow, if we were to just take a minute and just
Is
ask
this
Google the
true?
right question and
Do
ask,
a fact check. Yeah,
yeah, is this true? Is it factual? Is it what is the four-way test? Is it true? Is it something? There's a couple of questions. I forgot what it is. But just ask some questions to help us, and you would begin to realize that what it was saying had to have been an error.
I laugh. I'm smiling too because I mean that's a excellent, relevant situation that you're describing that just happened recently. You said yesterday. And so people are grasping for straws, looking for various reasons or excuses to cry.
It feeds their narrative.
Yeah, and that's sad. And those of us who know better and those should do better is what we're
Should.
just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just for us to just say, sound the alarm and say, hey guys, stop, blow the whistle, time out, let's regroup, and let's do better because we know better. Anyway, it's time. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Any last thoughts of encouragement as to how we can heal as a nation, and then we'll end.
I thank you, Dr. Gordon, for
Sure.
having me on this podcast. You will go down in the history of my first ever podcast. I've never
Oh,
done
really?
Yeah, I've never done one of these before. So thank you very much for having me
Thank you.
on
Yeah.
this one. And I think the only thing I'll say to persons is listen, uh, respect, tolerance. Those are three keywords. Everybody will not agree with you, but we have to learn to listen to others, respect their opinion, tolerate what they're saying, even if it differs from ours, and learn how to walk away. When I was going to school, I boast often that I went to Caribbean Community. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Caribbean Community, for those who are watching and might not know, was the school run, the elementary and high school actually,
Correct.
run by
It
the
went K
AME
through
Church,
12, right?
K through 12, run by the AME Church in the Virgin Islands for a period of time. I went to both campuses at one point. There was a campus at the Bethel AME Church in
Right.
Christiansted, and there was also a campus
Down in
at
Frederickstead, Blue
down in
Mountain.
Frederick, up in Mountain,
Yeah,
Blue
Blue
Mountain.
Mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to both campuses. I've been fortunate enough, and I can always remember Miss Gaskin as well, who used to say to us, if you don't, um, if something happens and you can't resolve it, it is better to walk away.
Yeah.
And those words I think are the most powerful words to ever been passed on, because there are a lot of times when you just, even when it's going to upset you, and if you find yourself getting to the point where you can't control your emotions, it is best to walk away than to say something in anger, do something in anger that you will regret later on. And I think just as a nation, we need to listen to each other. And I'm a preacher. So here's my sermon in 30 seconds. I was challenged on something I did on Monday morning that said I can't preach in 30 seconds, but I'm going to
Go
try.
ahead. Here you go.
Um, and here's my sermon in 30 seconds. With all that's happening, political unrest, pandemic, um, economic
Uncertainty.
instability
Yeah.
and uncertainty, challenges with school and our education system, racial unrest, with all that is happening, here is one constant that can be proven by scripture, that God has always been faithful, and that God has always stood on the side of the oppressed, and that God has always delivered his people. And if we think and hold on to those three things, and basically, number four, in a nutshell, and under umbrella, if we simply hold on to God, there is a better side that will come out of this. And when we get on the other side, all of this will make sense, and all of this will be worth it.
It's an excellent 30-second sermon, which segues into what I normally say in ending the podcast. Folks, we have faith, we have hope, and we have love. All of those three are very important, but the greatest of these three is love. See you next week.
Thank you for joining Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon as we learned about different perspectives of contemporary social and educational issues. We hope to educate and encourage as we analyze those topics that are important to you. Please continue to join us every Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, as new episodes are uploaded on your favorite podcast directory. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking on the link below this episode and respond to our fun trivia questions at drgordonpodcast1@gmail.com. Remember, become that positive difference that creates a positive outcome in the lives of others as well as in your own life. See you next Sunday afternoon on Positive Solutions with Dr. Gordon.